Hi guys, welcome to Didedi's Crafty Corner. Today I'm sharing with you my design team project for the not too shabby shop. I'm going to be showing you how I made this adorable little card using the My Favorite Thing Skis and Greetings, so let's get with it. Let me start by showing you the products that I used to pull off this card. All of these products were purchased from Jamie's Not Too Shabby shop, but at different times, so you'll have to check the link below to see if they're still in stock. We're going to be starting off with the My Favorite Things Skis and Greetings stamp set. Such a cute set, guys, so adorable. I'm going to be stamping out all three of the bears, but I'm just going to be using two of the bears. I'm going to be stamping them out in the My Favorite Things Hybrid Black ink, which is perfect for all of your alcohol markers. And then I'm also going to be using the sentiment on there that says Skis and Greetings as well. I got my design idea from the actual sketch challenge from My Favorite Things for last week, so that's a great place to get inspiration. I'm also going to be using two action wobbles. I'm going to be using a small one and a large one. Just as a side note, I did have to trim down the large one just a little bit so it wouldn't show past my bear's tummy. Also, we're going to be using the My Favorite Things tiny checked pattern paper, and this paper is fantastic. I love checks and gingham. Those are my favorites. I'm going to be using the brighter green, but this pad would be perfect for any colors that you might do your bears in, so it would blend perfectly. And then I'm also going to be using a landscape A2 110-pound base for my card base, and I'm going to be using the stitched basic edge dies. I'm going to be using the rounded one, and then I'm also going to use, which I'm not showing you at this point, I don't believe, but I'm going to be using the stitch sentiment strips as well for the season's greeting sentiment that I'm going to be putting on the card. So let's get these stamps stamped out and get started. Alright, so the coloring is going to be super easy, super simple coloring here. I'm going to be keeping the middles of pretty much all of my images lighter than the outside edges. So in this scarf I'm using R24, R27, R29, and the middle of the scarf is going to be lighter than the edges. So I'm going to go back and flick in a little bit darker around the edges that need it just to give it a little dimension, and then we're going to color his sweater in greens. And the greens that I chose to use for his sweater are YG21, YG23, and YG25. And again, I'm just going to keep the entire bear, the sweater on the bear, the lightest color, and then I'm going to come in from the outside edges and bring the darker colors in to the middle. And then I'm going to smooth it back out with my lightest color. So this is just very basic, very simple coloring. And then for the second bear, I'm going to reverse the colors. So I'm going to be doing a red sweater on the second bear and a green scarf on the second bear. And for the skis, I'm just going to color them in with the Jelly Roll Clear Star pen and give them a little bit of shine. And I'm going to be using the glaze pen for their eyes, the glaze pen in black for their eyes and their nose. So as you can see, I'm just blending. That's all I'm doing. I'm just blending out this sweater to give it a rounded look so it doesn't look just one dimension. And then the trick that I do with pretty much all of my stamps is I love to do the dot technique. So I'm going to go in with all of the colors of green on that sweater, and I'm just going to make little dots, and that's going to give that sweater some texture. I'm going to use that same dot technique on the bear's fur. So I'll be doing the bears in W's, W1, W3, W5, and then I'll be doing the same thing. I'll just be doing little dots on their furs, their faces, and just to kind of give them a little more dimension. I also used a couple of blues, B45, B39, around the edges of the sweater. And here you can see, I just went in and just did the dots. I really wanted to show you how that looked. So after I get my bear colored, I start with my lightest color, in this case was W1. and I do my darkest color and I leave the middle of the bear light, and then I take my lightest color and I make some dots in the areas that would normally be the darkest part of the bear. I go to my middle color, do some dots, go to my darkest color and do some more dots, and then I take my colorless blender and add even more dots. And this gives this little bear so much dimension and so much character and so much interest. I absolutely love doing this technique. If you haven't tried it, go ahead and give it a try. Don't worry about how many dots. That's the number one question I get. How many dots should I put? I never know when to stop. Stop when it looks good. When it looks good to you, go ahead and give it a stop. But don't forget to do the last step with the colorless blender, because that really blends it all in. Even if you think you have too many dark dots or just too many dots, if you use a colorless blender, it's going to smooth it all out and make it look fantastic. So that is how I colored up these little bears. I will be cutting them out with my brother's Scan and Cut, because you guys know I don't purchase the dies for these little critters anymore. And then we'll get the action wobble set to the back of them, and we will move on to getting these cards put together. So again, I'm doing this technique on both of the bears, so they're both going to look the same, only in opposite colors, and then I'll add the little hat at the end. Okay, we're ready to get this little guy put together. So I'm going to start with my base. I've already cut out my patterns with the stitched basic edges. I've cut it out. I'm using both the top and bottom piece, and I've also cut out a piece of fun foam to put on the back, because I wanted to give the top part of the card a little bit of dimension. So all I'm doing is I'm gluing my fun foam to that piece. I'm gluing the fun foam to the card base, and then we'll go ahead and add the bottom piece to the card as well. So all I'm doing is I cut this to be just a little bit, 1/8 of an inch smaller than my card, so there would be a little bit of white showing all around the card. So I'm going to use the same glue. My glue of choice is the Art Glitter Glue, and any place I might have gotten a little extra glue, I'm just going to clean it up, get the excess off. It's going to dry clear. No one will ever see it. And I'm going to put the bottom piece on. The reason I decided to do the bottom piece instead of leaving the bottom of the card white is just to give it interest, and also to give it a place to kind of ground my bears, to give it a little movement, to make it kind of look like there was a hill there and they would be skiing. I used a trim piece of paper left over from that card front, and I put it on a piece of white 80-pound cardstock, which was cut smaller than the card base, and that's going to trim up the inside of my card. I highly recommend that if you have little pieces of paper left over from your design, go ahead and use it on the inside of your card. It's going to give your card a nice touch without you actually having to do anything on the inside. I'm also going to be popping up my sentiment, so I'm using a tiny little piece of fun foam on the back of the white sentiment, and I'm going to be popping that up on the red stitch sentiment strip from My Favorite Things, and that's going to be the sentiment for the front of the card. Again, I'm just going to be using my art glitter glue for that, and clearing off anything that looks like it might be a bit messy, and then I will glue that right down to the top of the paper. Now I'm just going to use a pair of scissors to kind of remember where I'm going to be putting that sentiment, because I do want the two bears to fit on there and be able to show enough white space to still give the illusion of the hill in the background. So the scissors came in quite handy for this, and I've already put the action wobbles on the back of the bears. Like I said, the small one fit perfectly on the small bear, and the small one would have fit perfectly on the large bear as well. But I did use the larger wobble on the larger bear, and I had to trim down the sides just a little bit. So now I've got those popped up, and that concludes this card, guys. Super fun to do this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Head on over to Jamie's Not Too Shabby shop to get all of your crafty supplies, and I'll see you in the next video.